My mom's new husband tried to kick me out, but he had no idea what was coming next. I never thought my own home, the place where I had spent every holiday, every birthday, and every quiet Sunday morning with my dad, would one day become the battleground of my life. But that's exactly what happened. I can still see it vividly, like it's burned into my memory. I had just come back from class, my backpack slung over my shoulder, earbuds still in, and as I walked down the hall toward my room, I noticed something taped to my door. At first, I thought it was some joke. My stepbrother Ethan had pulled plenty of stupid pranks before, signs on my back, toothpaste in my shoes. So I rolled my eyes, ready to rip it down. But when I read the first line, my whole body froze.
Note-se Tovacate, 30 days.
The words blurred for a second because my brain refused to process them. I blinked, read them again, and my stomach dropped. Below it, in thick black ink, was a signature I recognized instantly. Not mine. Not my mom's. It was signed by Victor, my mom's new husband. Before I could even say anything, I heard a cough behind me. I turned, and there he was, standing at the end of the hallway, arms crossed over his chest like some self-appointed sheriff. Behind him stood my mom. She wasn't smiling. She wasn't even looking at me. She was staring down at the carpet, silent, small.
Vitor spoke fast.
His voice had that smug, calm tone that made me want to break something.
E ora lá do Tinal, Alex.
It's time you moved on. Lily needs her own room. You've got 30 days to find another place to stay. I couldn't believe what I was hearing.
My own room. My own house. My dad's house.
And this man, who had only been in my life for barely 2 years, was telling me to get out like I was some stranger. I looked straight at my mom, waiting for her to intervene, to stop him, to defend me. But all she whispered, without even lifting her head, was, "It's just temporary, honey. You can stay with Ryan for a while." Ryan.
My best friend.
He lived in a cramped studio apartment barely big enough for him and his neurotic cat that scratched anyone who got too close. The idea of being forced out of my home, treated like an unwanted guest in the place where I had grown up, while Victor's daughter got to move into my room, it was humiliating.
Infuriating.
But I didn't shout. I didn't argue. I walked past them without a word, into my room, and closed the door behind me. I sat on the bed, my fists clenched, heart pounding in my ears. Because what Victor didn't know, and what apparently my mom had never told him, was that this house wasn't his. It wasn't even my mom's anymore. It was mine. When my dad got sick, his biggest fear wasn't dying. It was leaving me unprotected. I can still picture that night. He had called me into his study, the room filled with the smell of old books and the faint ticking of the clock. He looked thin, his face pale, but his eyes were sharp. He said, "Alex, this house, it's not just walls and a roof. It's safety. It's family. I don't know what the future holds, but I do know this. I want you to always have a place that's yours. So I'm putting the deed in your name."
When you tar ninguém, itll beioso trictrit.
I was stunned. "But what about Mom?" I asked. He gave me a sad smile.
E traste har.
"I love her, but life can change people. I need to know that no matter what, you'll have a place where you're safe.
Promise-me ull protect it.
Promise me you'll finish school and make something of yourself." I promised him, and 3 months later, he was gone. For a while it was just me and Mom. We were both grieving, both broken, but at least we had each other. The silence in the house was heavy, but it was ours. And then she met Victor. At first, I wanted to be supportive. She deserved happiness again. Victor seemed charming, always smiling, always saying the right thing. But even then, something about him felt rehearsed. Like every compliment, every laugh, every gesture was part of an act. Within months, they were married.
Em Sudenli, de house vasteo os animori.
Victor moved in with his 2 kids, Ethan, a year younger than me, who treated everything like a competition, and Lily, 10 years old, shy but spoiled in that way where no one ever told her no. The house became louder, messier, more crowded. I tried to adapt. I tried to be part of this so-called new family. But little by little, things began to disappear. One Saturday morning, I went to the garage to grab a wrench and noticed an empty spot on the shelf. My dad's old red toolbox, the one with the faded stickers and the squeaky hinge, was gone. I asked Victor about it, and he shrugged. That old junk?
I donate dici.
The garage needed space. I froze. That toolbox wasn't junk. It was every Saturday afternoon I ever spent with my dad, learning how to hold a wrench, how to fix a pipe, how to change oil. It was greasy hands and his voice telling me, lefty-loosey, righty-tighty. And now it was gone.
Just like that.
A few weeks later, Dad's study was cleared out. His books, his notebooks, his old leather chair, gone. Replaced with weights, a treadmill, and mirrors. Victor called it his home gym. My graduation photo disappeared from the living room wall. When I asked Mom about it, she just said, "We're decluttering." Even the fridge had labels now. One side was marked family, and the other Alex. Piece by piece, I was being erased from my own home.
Onde den quem me derus.
No showers after 10, because the pipes were too loud. Dinner at 6 sharp. Mandatory for everyone. No locking bedroom doors, because that's not how family works. But none of this felt like family. It felt like eviction in slow motion. And then came the final straw, the eviction notice taped to my door. That night, after Victor strutted away, I pulled out the folder my dad had left me. Inside was the deed, my name typed clearly across it. At the bottom was a sealed envelope in my dad's handwriting. For when you need courage. I hadn't opened it yet. I wasn't ready. But I knew the time was coming. The next morning, I called Ms. Kim, my dad's old lawyer. She looked over the deed and shook her head. "Alex, this house is legally yours. Your mom can stay if you let her, but Victor has no rights here. If he's trying to force you out, it's illegal. I'll draft a letter confirming your ownership." I left her office with the letter in one hand and the deed in the other. For the first time in months, I felt steady. That evening, I laid the papers on the dining table in front of Victor and my mom. He picked them up, skimmed them, and laughed. "This is cute. Did you print this off the internet?" I pointed to the county stamp. "It's real. This house is mine." My mom gasped. "Alex, why didn't you ever tell me?" "I thought you knew," I said. "Dad set this up to protect me. To protect us." Victor's face turned red. He slammed his fist on the table.
"So now you think you're the boss?"
"You think you can make the rules?" I stayed calm. "I'm not bossing anyone, but I'm setting boundaries. My room stays mine. Dad's study stays untouched. Keepsakes stay where they belong. We sign a lease, for $1 a month, just to make it official. If you can't agree, then you have 30 days to leave." For a second, silence filled the room. My mom looked torn, but Victor leaned forward, his voice low and dangerous. "We're not signing anything. This is our house." "No," I said quietly but firmly. "It's mine. Respect it or get out." Victor opened his mouth like he had a dozen arguments lined up and then shut it, nostrils flaring. The clock in the kitchen ticked too loudly, each second pressing into the silence between the three of us. My mom finally looked up, not at me but at the window over the sink where the evening light had turned the glass a pale gold. "Maybe we should sleep on it," she said, voice thin. Victor snapped, "There's nothing to sleep on," and dragged his chair back so hard one leg screeched across the tile. He stalked down the hall. I heard the master bedroom door slam, the cheap frame shuddering like it might split. My mom rubbed her temples the way she always did when she had a headache, then gathered the mail and stacked it into perfect squares that didn't need organizing. "You should have told me," she whispered. I wanted to tell her I had, just not with words. I'd shown up for years, taken care of the grass, fixed the leaky shower, paid half the utilities since I turned 18. Instead, I said, "I thought you knew," and she nodded like she'd been expecting that answer and hated it anyway.
He slept with my shoes next to the bed and the dead folder under my pillow.
It was stupid and dramatic, but the house felt like a place you could be exiled from without warning, and I didn't want to wake up on the wrong side of a locked door. In the morning, the kitchen smelled like burned toast and a truce nobody believed in. Victor sat at the table in a new athletic shirt, scrolling through his phone with short, angry swipes. He didn't look at me. My mom poured coffee and missed the mug, dark liquid dribbling onto the counter, her hands shaking just enough to give it away. I went to class because routine is a kind of weapon. The professor's voice blurred into air conditioner hum, and by the time I walked back home, the sun had slid behind a thin cloud and the house looked like it was squinting at me. My key turned in the deadbolt and stopped. I tried again, slow, careful. The key wouldn't go in. I pressed my forehead to the door and inhaled the smell of old paint and summer heat. Then I tried the knob like an idiot who hadn't processed the first clue. Lock. I called the locksmith and sat on the front step pretending my pulse wasn't roaring. When the van pulled up, the guy hopped out, cheerful in that end-of-shift way.
Locked yourself out?
He asked. Got my key right here, I said, holding it up.
Door just forgot how to be a door.
He laughed, set down his tools, and then Victor's truck screeched into the driveway like a bad decision. He jumped out, mouth already open. What are you doing? He shouted.
You don't live here anymore.
The locksmith blinked, looked at me, looked at Victor.
He said.
I pulled the folder from my backpack and held up the deed like it could physically block the sound of Victor's voice.
I do live here, he said. I own here.
That piece of paper doesn't mean anything, Victor hissed. Get off my property. I didn't want to, but my fingers were already dialing 911 because I could feel where this was going. Victor did the same, his voice too loud as he recited our address to the dispatcher. While we waited, he paced in short, furious lines, heels clicking. The locksmith hovered near his van, eyes wide, pretending to rearrange his case. Mrs. Alvarez from 2 doors down stepped onto her porch, arms folded over a bright pink robe.
Everything okay, Alex?
She called. Before I could answer, Victor snapped, Everything is fine. She raised her eyebrows, gazed at the locksmith, at me, at the folder, and said nothing, which somehow felt like a witness statement.
The cruiser rolled up, lights off, heat shimmering above the hood.
The officer got out, friendly polite, the way people are when they don't know yet which direction the cliff drops. Afternoon.
What is going on?
I handed him the deed and Ms. Kim's letter. He read with that careful patience cops use when they're making an effort to be thorough. So you're the owner? He said. Yes, sir. He nodded toward Victor. And you changed the locks? It's my house, Victor snapped. He's refusing to leave. He's been threatening us. The officer looked at me. Have you been threatening anyone? No, sir, I said, my voice suddenly quiet enough to feel like it belonged to somebody else.
I hard my own pulse.
The officer flipped the deed over, read the recording stamp, then the letterhead with Ms. Kim's name. Sir, he said to Victor, patient but not sympathetic, you cannot lock the owner out of his own property. That's an illegal lockout. Victor threw up his hands.
This is insane.
He's a kid. He can't. Mrs. Alvarez's voice floated over, calm and sharp. He pays the water bill. I've seen him put it in the mailbox every month. And you taped a paper to his door last week. I saw that too. Victor turned around slow like he'd forgotten neighbors existed. His mouth opened and closed. The officer's jaw tightened. Okay, he said. Here's what's going to happen. You're going to give him a working key right now, or I'm going to stand here while the locksmith changes it back and file a report. Up to you. Victor pulled a key from his pocket and threw it at the grass. The officer didn't even sigh. He just stared until Victor bent, picked it up, and dropped it into my palm, metal warm from his body heat. Inside, the air smelled like lemon cleaner and something else. Victory mixed with collision. My mom stood in the kitchen, hands braced on the counter, eyes red. He shouldn't have changed the locks, she said, like if she acknowledged that, the rest might remain unsaid. No, I agreed. We stared at each other. I didn't want this, she said. This, us against each other. Me neither, I said. She looked down at the counter, where a ring of coffee had dried into a perfect outline, and wiped it with her sleeve like erasing a planet. That night, when the house finally quieted to its regular groans and the water heater ticked like an old watch, I took out the sealed envelope I'd avoided for almost 2 years. "For when you need courage," my dad had written in his blocky caps. I slit it with my thumbnail and unfolded 2 pages. He didn't write advice the way other dads did. He wrote like he was building something with words. Where to put the nail, how to brace the board, how to test if a shelf would hold. He said the house wasn't just wood and brick. It was a promise we made to each other to show up when the pipes leaked and the roof howled. He told me about the day he'd brought me home from the hospital and couldn't figure out the car seat and laughed and cried at the same time on the porch. He wrote, "If someone makes you feel like a guest in your own life, tighten the bolts.
Don't just hold the dead. Hold the line."
By the second page, the ink had blurred into small galaxies where my tears fell and dried. I folded it back up and slid it into the folder with the deed, the pages soft at the corners from so much handling. The next morning I texted my mom, "Coffee?"
Just us.
She replied with a time and a thumbs-up emoji that looked like a bandage. We met at the little cafe by the pharmacy where the barista always spelled my name with 2 X's. My mom wrapped both hands around her mug like it could heat her bones. Up close, she looked older than she had a month ago. "I didn't know about the deed," she said at once. "He didn't tell me," I said. "He didn't tell anyone. He just did it when he got sick." She nodded, swallowed. "He used to keep me from the big worries," she said. "He would fix something just to be fixing something and say it made him feel like the world was put together at least in one corner." We sat with that image for a second. Dad tightening a screw in the universe. I slid the lease across the table. "Mom, I'm not trying to push you out," I said.
You want peace.
"This puts our rules on paper. I won't take rent from you, $1 a month so it's legal. But I won't let Victor refinance the house. I won't sign anything that gives him leverage." She stared at the lease like it was a test and she'd studied the wrong chapter. Her thumb ran back and forth along the edge of the paper. "He wants to refinance," she said finally, voice so small it almost wasn't there. "He's in debt, Alex. I didn't know until after we got married. It felt like a hole under the rug. You don't see it until your heel sinks." She blinked fast. "He said the refinance would help us all. He said you could stay with Ryan for a couple of months while we rearranged rooms. He said you didn't really need your room." And I wanted to believe him because wanting is easier than looking at a ledger and seeing red. I let out a breath I hadn't admitted I was holding. "I won't put the house up," I said. "Not for him. Not for anyone."
That's the line.
She nodded. "I know," she said. "I think I knew before you said it." When we got home, the living room was a museum for people pretending nothing had happened. The TV was on mute, a cooking show silently dicing onions. Victor sat on the far end of the couch like it might be a throne if he stared hard enough. Ethan occupied the floor, sprawled out with a controller. He flicked his eyes up at me with the instinctive annoyance of a younger brother only half related. Lily peeked around the corner and then disappeared. "We need to talk," I said, and everyone pretended to find the ceiling very interesting. I laid the lease on the coffee table and explained it. Calm, slow, not because I wanted to condescend, but because clarity is a kindness you give to yourself when someone else refuses to offer it. "This isn't about money," I repeated. "It's about rules so we don't tear each other apart. You can live here if you can live with us." Victor didn't touch the paper. "I'm not signing your power trip," he said.
I'm not your tenant.
"Then you're my guest," I said as evenly as I could, "and you don't get to change locks or rooms or lives."
Ethan set his controller down a little too loud.
"This house sucks anyway," he muttered. "Can we just move?" Victor shot him a look, then snapped back to me. "We're not going anywhere," he said. "You think a paper makes you king?" "It makes me responsible," I said. "There's a difference." The next days felt like walking across a room that someone keeps moving the furniture in. Victor developed a habit of slamming cabinet doors. He sighed when I entered a room, heavy and theatrical, like I'd stolen his last good mood. He started inviting guys over, loud, gym-shirt men who laughed in bursts and took up space with their elbows. One night they showed up with a case of beer and cigars and the kind of loud whisper you use when you want to be heard. "Housewarming," Victor announced while I stood in the kitchen doorway.
For my house.
I set my phone on the counter, camera facing the room with the timestamp running. Cool, I said.
House rule. No smoking inside.
People need to be out by 10. And if anyone threatens anyone, I'll call the cop who liked my deed so much. Victor's friends laughed like I'd told the worst joke. But they didn't light the cigars. At 9:58, Victor checked the time and began herding them toward the door, cracking jokes that didn't reach his eyes. Control has a way of shrinking when you shine a light at it. I gave them a week to decide about the lease. I said it like I was offering time instead of a fuse. The house learned a new quiet, the kind that isn't peace but rather the absence of fresh explosions. I tried to study. The words slid off the page. I tried to sleep. The night rehearsed arguments for me. I fixed the cabinet hinge that had been squeaking for months and felt Dad in the tug of the screwdriver. I made pasta and oversalted it and ate it anyway. Lily started leaving little things in the hallway. An elastic band, a hair clip, a note that said, "Do you like cats, yes or no?" With both boxes checked, I drew a cat with an enormous head and left it on her door. In the morning it had a speech bubble that said, "Meow." And for a second the house felt like a place where soft things could live. On day 6, Victor walked into my room without knocking. He stood there like a hurricane pretending to be a man. "I'm not signing your lease," he said.
You can't control me.
"I can't," I agreed.
You can only control me.
"And my house." He took a step closer. "You don't get to push me out of my family." My jaw ached from clenching. "I'm not pushing my mother out," I said. "I'm offering her a home."
You're the one making this a choice.
For a heartbeat, something like fear crossed his face and then was gone, replaced by the old hot indignation. He slammed my door hard enough that the frame cracked at the top corner. I stared at the splintered paint and thought about buying wood filler on my way home from class. The deadline arrived like weather.
Vitor paque da box.
Then another. He announced he was staying with a friend for a few days. As if a few days could be stretched into an alibi for forever. My mom sat at the table with a pen and our lease. She signed her name slowly, each letter a small decision. When she slid the paper back to me, I felt something in my chest unclench. Not joy exactly, more like an organ remembering how to do its original job. Victor moved out over 3 afternoons that all pretended to be one long one. He took his weights, his treadmill, his smug silence. He left behind a single sock under the couch and a mug with a chipped lip that said, "One boss." Lily went with him at first, hauling a backpack and a stuffed rabbit and the braveness of kids who haven't learned yet that bravery costs something. Ethan went to his dad's 2 towns over and texted me a shrug emoji like it was a map.
The house is shaled.
The dishwasher made its loud dinosaur sound again, and no one complained. I reheated pasta, salted it right this time, and took a picture of the bowl because nothing monumental ever looks monumental when it's actually saving you. A week later, a letter arrived with official fatigue in its font. Victor had filed a claim, a mess of words about equitable interest and marital rights. I took it to Ms. Kim, who pursed her lips, not in worry but in the way doctors do when they've seen this rash 100 times. "We'll respond," she said, and we did. The court dismissed it like a fly. Polite, swift, final. Clear title.
No commingled funds.
A deed with a recording number that sat in the county vault like a fact carved in stone. I started to fix the small things. I patched the crack above my door with wood filler and sanded it smooth.
E reumai graduation foto in the living room.
My mom put back a picture of her and my dad at the county fair, her hair in a ponytail, his arm around her, both of them squinting into a sun that looks, in the picture, like it was warmer then than it is now. We wrote the house rules on an index card and taped them inside a cabinet where only we would see. Ask before moving things. No guests after 10 without a heads up. Keepsakes are sacred. Knock. They read more like promises than rules. On a Wednesday, I found Lily sitting on the front steps, her stuffed rabbit tucked under her arm. "Dad said I could stay here on weekends," she said, all defiance over a big, wobbling sadness. "If it's okay." "It is," I said. "We're making pancakes on Saturday."
With chocolate chips?
"Obviously." She nodded like that settled the important governance issues. Later, I texted Victor a pickup time for the last of his boxes and included a line about the officer who'd be there if he preferred an audience. He sent back K like he'd swallowed a nail. The first night the house felt truly ours again. The air was cool and the kitchen smelled like lemon and butter. I stood on the porch with 2 nails and hammered the loose board down, just like Dad had told me in that letter. The sound echoed off the quiet street, thunk, 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 and each strike stitched another inch of my life back together. My mom leaned in the doorway, a towel over her shoulder, watching me work. "You always did that right," she said. "Even when you were little, you tried to find the stud."
Ilauged, blinking hard against a sudden, stupid rush of tears.
"Lefty-loosey, righty-tighty," I said, and she smiled like a person remembering a joke they used to share with someone who isn't there anymore. That weekend, Lily and I made pancakes and she got flour in her hair and I didn't tell her because some messes are proof of joy. We ate on the back steps, legs sticking to the paint, and she asked if cats can see ghosts. I told her I didn't know and she nodded, satisfied, like that was the only honest answer. After breakfast, we went into the garage and I opened the second-hand red toolbox I'd bought at a yard sale. It wasn't my dad's, but when the top slid open with a metal sigh, it sounded close enough. I handed Lily a small level and showed her how the bubble had to sit right in the middle. She held it like I'd given her something that mattered. "We're making this straight," she said. "That's the plan," I told her, and for once the word didn't feel like a dare. That night, after Lily went back to Victor's apartment and the house settled into the warm, contented kind of quiet, my phone buzzed. A text from Victor. "You think you won. You didn't. You just split a family." I stared at it for a long time, thumbs hovering. Then I typed, "I offered you a home with boundaries. You chose neither." I set the phone face down and let the message sit there like a nail I wasn't going to hammer in anymore.
The next morning woke up before my alarm and walked through the house barefoot.
The floor was cool. The light in the kitchen hit at exactly 4 o'clock the way my dad said it would. I made coffee and stood in the patch of sun like a person stepping under a blessing. The house creaked the way old houses do, as if it were reminding me that it was alive, too, that it had work for me and rooms to keep warm and a promise I had not just inherited but accepted.